Hi, I'm Paul Goddard, clinical hypnotherapist and master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming. This is my interview with Miguel Dean, author of Stepping Stones in the Mist, Life's Lessons for Overcoming Adversity. It's a fantastic book that talks about a troubled upbringing to his life of living on the streets and becoming a traveller for a while, to eventually turning his life round and becoming an inspirational speaker and life coach. I interviewed him on full moon Summer Solstice, a special time for Miguel. I don't really need to say anymore, just relax, sit back and enjoy this amazing story from this wonderful man. Okay, so Miguel, thank you for joining me today and allowing me this time for the interview. I've got your fantastic book here that I've just finished last night, Stepping Stones in the Mist, so you can just sit here. I'll put a close-up as well so people can see. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've noticed about this book is that you're incredibly honest, which was actually a breath of fresh air for me, because it's nice to read that, you know, I do my own practice, my own NLP, we've all got this stuff going on inside our head. Mm-hmm. How easy did you find it to come out and be open and honest like that, or was there anything which you struggled to get down on the paper?
It was pretty easy, really, because I guess it's just how I am, and the book. There was an intention when I wrote the book that I didn't want it to be edited. I didn't want to sort of self-edit it. I wrote it very quickly, and it just kind of like fell out of me. And I really believe that honesty and authenticity, transparency, I think they're a really big key part in what's causing some of the challenges, shall we say, in the world. Because when we're not honest and when we don't own fully who we are, then we kind of isolate bits of ourselves and we're fragmented and we're not in our full power, if you like. The strange paradox, it seems to be that the more open and honest you are, the more you do actually step into your authentic power, because there's nothing to hide. There's no secrets. I've got a terrible memory, so I'd be useless at being dishonest, because I'd never remember what I said and what I didn't say and so on. And I just find if you're honest, then you've got nothing to worry about, and everything's a bit more relaxed, and it gives other people permission to be honest as well and to be imperfect, because I think that's part of the human condition, that we are sort of perfect in our imperfection, if you like. Yeah.
So this book, when I went to your talk at the Isborne, a lot of people were very praising it and said how good it was and how much it helped them. It also takes a great deal of guts to, I think, self-publish as well, because you're putting everything on, well, I won't say everything online, but a lot of things on the line. And for a lot of people, they might well think that actually going to publisher and getting that sort of stamp of approval, it's like, yes, I can publish it now. David Hamilton, I interviewed recently, has been incredibly successful, and his books were rejected, but the very first one he written, he self-published it as well. What strength did you get inside to think, yes, I'm actually going to do this and I'm going to put all the effort in and sell my books?
I came to the decision to self-publish quite quickly. It didn't take very long at all, really, and I think it just seemed that the whole publishing thing just seemed a bit more complicated, and that there was the possibility that I might have to compromise and sort of negotiate, and I just wanted it to be just as it was, I didn't want it, as I say, I didn't really want to edit it, or I certainly didn't want anybody else editing it. So I guess when I decide to do something, I just do it, and I don't always think terribly well into the advance and kind of like think it through. It just felt like, no, this is the right way to do it, and I didn't really know where it was going to go, what was going to, how successful it would be or how popular it would be, or it's funny, isn't it, when the first time somebody reads it, it's just like, well, they might say this is a load of crap, or they might really like it. So I it wasn't so much a sort of mental decision, it was more of a sort of like heart, just gut decision of this just feels like the right thing to do, so this is what I'm going to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody that wishes to self-publish themselves, what advice and tips would you give to them to really get a book going and make sure they speak from the heart, which this certainly does?
Well, yeah, I think, as I say, I think if you write from the heart, then it speaks to people's hearts, then it will touch people's hearts. And that's a really big theme for me as well, in that I feel that we've got a little bit too stuck in the head. And my understanding of being healthy and being whole is when there's a balance of kind of head and heart, if you like, the sort of feeling centre and the sort of thinking centre. I'm probably, in a way, I'm not the best person to give advice about the self-publishing. No, I am, because I can say that there are lots of things that I would do differently and don't do it the same way that I did it. In that, when I finished writing the book and it was self-published, all that stuff happened, it felt a bit like, okay, that's the end of the journey. But actually, what I realise now is, in a way, it's the beginning of the journey. And these days, it seems that if you really want to get something out there on a big scale, you've really got to embrace all the social media and the internet and all that online stuff if you really want to get it out there. So my books, this book, I would say, has had a sort of, it's had a steady trickle, and in a way it was kind of like a practice, a sort of experiment, so I'm a great believer in there's no such thing as failure, there's just feedback. So I've had plenty of feedback for me of how I would do it differently, and I think the key thing is getting the marketing right, because I do find myself feeling a little frustrated that as time goes on, and there's another book that is rising in me, and so I know that this next one will be done very differently. So I think the key it depends what you want in a way as well. Whether the intention behind the book is it to bring some income in, is it part of your sales funnel, or is it just a sort of act of service? Which I guess that was mostly what it was about for me. I didn't really know what I was doing. It was I just felt this urge in me. People kept saying, "You've got a really interesting story. You should write a book." And my initial thing was, it doesn't feel that interesting to me. It's just my life. It's just what's happened. But I think the important thing is the intention that you set, and just keep going forward. Just keep going forward with whatever feels right for you. Whether you decide that you want to try and make it go really big. I mean, it's just been lovely for me. It feels for me it's like a seed, and whenever somebody buys a copy, or it feels like, great, that's another little seed out in the world. And as it says at the back, when you've read it, please don't let it gather dust on a shelf, pass it on. So I guess in a way that kind of illustrates, I'm kind of working this out a little bit as I talk, that my intention wasn't, if my intention was about selling loads and making loads of money, I wouldn't have put that at the back. It was that I wanted it to be read by as many people as possible, because I felt that it could help. Yeah.
At the beginning, you had quite a upsetting childhood by losing your mum, which you were very young at the time, so couldn't quite remember. But then what was very painful to you was your aunt that you were taken away from, so it was like a second loss. Anybody, a child that's out there, or somebody a little later in life that may have gone through or going through something like that now, what could you say to them, to maybe, if they're listening to this, to help ease the pain that they may be going through right now?
Yeah. Well, there's a quote that comes to mind by Warren Buffett that says that the children almost broken by the world are the ones most likely to save it. Now, I don't really like the word save. I don't feel like I'm here to save the world or anything. I don't believe that the world needs saving. I believe it's all unfolding in the way it's meant to. But at the same time, I want to contribute to the change and so on, and moving things through as smoothly as possible with as little suffering that needs to happen, to the planet and to humanity. So I think the key thing for me, we have two options. When tough stuff happens, we can become a victim, and we can kind of like go downhill and become bitter and kind of close up, sort of close your heart, or you can say, I'm going to use this, as a step to really step up, and it's all about perspective, isn't it? I choose to see my challenges as gifts. The things that happen is, I have two options. I can either, as I say, I can be really miserable and depressed and the world's a horrible place and poor me, or I can say, okay, I've had experience of this, so this puts me in a really good position to be able to empathise and to be able to help other people. So when tough stuff happens, you're going to feel the pain of it, and it's going to be challenging. But if you choose to, well, there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and it's your choice how quickly you move towards that light, I guess. Yeah.
When you were a traveller and you were with nature, there was some times which it was quite a dark time, like you mentioned about being attacked at one stage with an iron bar, and that wasn't the first time you were attacked. Were there any real moments of beauty being that close to nature that you would like to say to people?
Yes, there were. But it's a really good question. It's a really current question for me, actually, because I'm actually I'm in a sort of transitional phase of my life, and my number one option of what the next stepping stone looks like is to move into a yurt on the land and get really back close to nature. Now the funny thing is, it kind of feels like a spiral in a way. It's like, all right, you're going back to living in a tent and all that sort of stuff. But I'm such a different person, and now it will be in a much more conscious way. In a way, when I was back in my New Age traveller days, I was in so much pain and I was so numb and so out of my face most of the time that I didn't really appreciate it, and I didn't connect with it. It's kind of like you can be surrounded by the most beautiful stuff. You could be in paradise, but if inside yourself you're in pain, you can't see the beauty, and you're not really connecting, kind of thing. So there was, I don't think I appreciated it at the time. When I look back, if I could do those things again, there were so many wonderful nights spent around open fires, under the sky with musical instruments and, a few beers invariably and whatever else. I remember helping to replant the Caledonian forest in the Highlands of Scotland, and the beauty up there, I did recognise it even then, even through all the sort of numbness and the sort of unconsciousness that I was living at the time. And I think I think just being close to nature, even though I wasn't aware of it fully, did play a part in sort of healing and helping catalyse my growth and my development, sort of thing, to get to a point where I decided I really need to step up here and start living a different life.
Before that happened, there was a stage when you were on the streets of Edinburgh begging for money, and as you said, to actually be able to do it, a few beers actually helped you to be out on the street. There are times when I see somebody on the street and I often wonder, what would that person like me to do? I sometimes think maybe just a chat with them they might quite like, maybe giving them money might be the best option for them because that's what makes them happy, or going off and buying them a cup of coffee. From what your experience is, what would be the most kindest and helpful thing to you if you could go back and help yourself at that time?
I'm not sure that it's all a bit blurry, but I'm not sure if I ever remember anybody stopping and kind of crouching down, just getting down to my level and just having a conversation with me as a sort of human to human. It's that whole thing of just the levels. You're down on the floor and they're walking and they're up there. I've been asked a similar question before, and I do think that it's good to ask the homeless person the question. I'd like to help. Is there anything that I can that I can do? And it may be a coffee, or it may be, is it all right if I sit down and have a chat with you for a bit? Because I think that human connection is, and just to be heard and just to be seen and just be recognised, can move mountains. It can be just something sort of switches inside you when somebody really hears you and really sees you. And a lot of people say, should you give homeless people money? That they're probably just going to spend it on drugs or beer or whatever. And my response to that is just give your gift. You give your gift with no strings attached. And if they choose to spend it on drugs or beer or food or whatever, that's their choice. And it's still a gift as long as it's given with love, because my experience is that most of the time people that are taking drugs to numb the pain. It's kind of self-medication, and I don't draw a massive distinction between going to the doctors and getting antidepressants or some tablets from them, or self-medicating with cannabis or something like that. It's really, although it's not a conscious decision, but I think that's generally what's happening. It's numbing the pain, because everybody has a story, and I don't believe anybody ends up on the street out of choice and because they think it's a really nice idea. It's because something has happened. It's usually equated to sort of low self-worth. This is the best that I believe that I'm worthy of. So yeah, ask the question. Just it's always good to ask what I'd like to help. What is it all right if I sit down and have a chat? Would you like a cup of coffee? Can I give you a few quid? And as long as it's given from a loving space, I think it will contribute and it will make a difference to that person.
Yeah, that's good advice. There's a story which I read in this book, and it's when you come across a pheasant, and it was caught in brambles, I think, and trying to get out. And the more it tried to fight its way through, the more pain it was causing itself. But when it actually faced its fear and came to you, it managed to fly away. So that actually, I know it's something I knew deep down inside. It's something that seemed to really resonate with me when you put that. Were there any other sort of stories and metaphors when either you were in the streets, or when you were camping, or when you were later on in life, a good metaphor that you would like to share with somebody like that? Because that really did do something for me.
Okay, the donkey story, yeah. So shall I just share briefly the story? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So there's an old grey donkey, and he's a curious sort of animal, and he's wandering around the farm where he lives one day, and he comes across in a sort of corner of the farm that he's not explored before, an old well, and he, being a curious sort of donkey, he jumps up onto the edge of the well to look down to see what's down there. But as he's a bit old and not terribly firm on his feet, he slips and he falls down into the well. There isn't a splash, it's more of a thud, because it's an old dry well. And to begin with, the donkey just starts making the most almighty sort of hullabaloo. He's really, really distressed. And eventually the farmer in the farmhouse hears this noise and comes running to see what's happening. And he looks down into the well and sees the old grey donkey down at the bottom. And he scratches his head and he thinks to himself, "Blimmin' donkey, how am I going to get it out of there?" And then he has an idea, and he thinks, well, for a little while this donkey's been nothing but trouble. He's old, and the well is obviously a bit of a health and safety issue. So maybe if I fill the old well in and bury the donkey at the same time, I will kill two birds with the same stone. So he calls all his friends and relations from the neighbouring farms and tells them to come with their shovels and their spades. And they come, and they all start digging and piling earth down into the well on top of the old grey donkey. To begin with, again, the donkey makes, he's again really distressed by what's going on here. He's finding the earth is kind of rising up his legs a little bit. And then after a short while, it all goes quiet. And the farmer, wondering what's happening, sort of puts down his spade and peers over while his friends and the relatives and so on are still digging. And to his surprise, what he sees is that as the earth comes tumbling down and lands on the donkey's back, he shakes it off and takes a step up. Every time the earth lands on his back, he shakes it off and takes a step up, till eventually he's rising slowly and slowly up in the well, and he rises to a point where he makes this almighty leap and scrambles up over the edge and runs away to freedom. So the metaphor really, behind that story is that sometimes what seem like the things that are going to bury us, our greatest challenges, can actually be our gifts, can actually be our salvation in disguise. And I'm a firm believer in that. That our challenges. I don't really believe in broken hearts. I believe when things happen really that really hurt us and that really cause pain in our heart, it's because our heart is breaking open. So it's not broken as it doesn't work anymore and it needs fixing. It's just broken open a little bit more. And I have a kind of image of like the bud of a rose that's kind of like opening. And it seems that in some way, the pain and the suffering and the challenges that we have in our lives, it's just a tool for opening our hearts. And the more our hearts open, the more we can the more fully alive we are, the more fully we can participate in the whole spectrum of life. Because life is everything. It is joy and beauty and bliss and love and happiness. But you can't have light without darkness. We live in a world of polarity, and I believe that there have to be both. And so yeah, that story of the old grey donkey is a really good reminder for me. If ever I get a little bit feeling sorry for myself or things are tricky, it's like, Miguel, there's a gift in this. You may not be able to see it yet, and I know it's tough, but you'll come through this, and you'll have grown, and you'll be more in your fullness, if you like, as a result of the experience.
You were talking about synchronicity. You mentioned it on the talk and also in your book about writing for a paper, and also there's various other things like when you had the donkey or the horse with tied with a rope round its foot when your first girlfriend was giving birth. What do you think the universe is giving to us at that stage, for us to have that sort of strange connection? Because I've had strange connections and things like that happen at some point. Yes.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is what it usually seems to be for me is it's a bit like a green light, a traffic light, sort of green light. It's like the universe saying, yeah, Miguel, you're on the right track. It's kind of like a clue, that you're in alignment, and also a reminder that what we perceive with our senses is just the tip of the iceberg. So it's kind of like, it's a bit of it. Don't forget the bigger picture, Miguel, here. Don't forget the bigger picture. And I really like this word that I learnt recently called pronoia, which is kind of like the opposite of paranoia, and it's about the belief that the universe is benevolent and everything that's happening is for my highest good. So yeah, I think those are some of the little gems that I draw out of synchronicity. Yeah.
Now, in your book, you mentioned that you really got that sense that enough was enough the way you were living your life, and you made that big change. For those that haven't read the book or been to your talk, what was it really deep within inside yourself that was that first spark of the seed that thinking, I'm going to make a change? Because sometimes making that change can be pretty frightening for people.
Yeah, it becomes that, better the devil we know, and sometimes the unknown is scarier than the known, even if the known is painful or it's not particularly comfortable. The first spark for me, which I think I'm not sure that I shared at the talk at Isborne, was when it was the guy that I was actually begging with in Edinburgh. We sort of like teamed up a little bit, and we'd kind of look out for each other and take it in turns and so on. But one night he just taken too much something or other, and I can still sort of see the image quite clearly in front of me. He was stood in front of me with a small hand axe in front of his, raised above his head, and he was really threatening me. And it was at that point that I just thought, Miguel, what are you doing with your life? You know, this is your best mate. He was kind of like my best mate at the time, and I just thought, you know, perhaps I can do better than this. And there was also a sense of, I need to get out of this, you know. I mean, quite a few of my friends had died of overdoses and car crashes and suicides and all sorts of stuff. And that really was the beginning. And it was, I think as is often the way, it just really hit me that I didn't want to be there any longer, or it wasn't safe, or it wasn't the right place. I didn't have a clue where I wanted to get to. I knew what I didn't want. This is what I'm trying to say. I knew what I didn't want very clearly from that moment, but I didn't actually know what I did want. I didn't really know what the options were, and I think on some level I didn't really believe I was worth anything more than that. You know, it was like, I don't want this, but you know, how do I get out? How do I get out of it? You know, and do I really have the motivation and the strength to detach from this world that had become known and familiar to me? It had become my life, sort of thing. How do I go into the unknown and leave all this behind? And because there's an isolation in that as well, you know. You know, one of the really powerful human needs, I believe, is the need to belong. And I was having that need met to some extent, although I was belonging to a highly dysfunctional sort of community. At least I was belonging, and that sense of, if I remove myself from this, I'm going to be totally alone. And I guess in a way that's been one of my greatest nemesis all the way through my life, this sort of fear of being totally alone. It's something that's that's been a big challenge for me.
You're also saying one of the big changes when you had your first counsellor, and one of the things you really appreciated was his connection, his listening skills. What do you think it is about truly listening that really helped you? And also, was there any other things that he did that really helped make that shift for you?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is that it was just really apparent that he cared. I have seen a few counsellors in my time, but I never came anywhere close to being with somebody that it was just so apparent that he really cared. And I think, you know, looking back, part of that was, again, it's almost like beyond the mind sort of stuff. There was just a sense that I was being really, really heard. And, you know, I like to use the word magic, really, and magic for me just means stuff that I can't comprehend with my mind, really, that's just, I've got no sort of points of reference for. I don't know how it works or whatever, but it does. And there seems to be this magic of really deep, heart-centered listening, or full-body listening, that enables you. It's like it's if all your thoughts are like a big ball of spaghetti or something, just the act of listening seems to sort of untangle it all and just straighten it all and bring more clarity. So that listening, I think it's one of the grossly underrated skills. There's so much that we want to do stuff and, you know, take action and fix people and stuff, but actually just the art of just really being present and really still, it's a kind of meditative space, really. Just being really still just can work incredible magic. And the other thing that he did was he asked questions. It wasn't like, you know, he's firing all these questions at me, but he just asked simple questions that made me start exploring, or maybe opening kind of closed filing cabinets in my mind that I hadn't opened before because I had not had to. So that, I think the combination of asking powerful questions and really deep listening is, it's second to none, really. It's so simple, often we just want to really complicate stuff, and there are so many different therapies and different modalities and ways of healing and therapy and so on, and they all have their place, but I think sometimes we get lost in the fanciness of all this stuff, and if we just come back to just really listening and just asking a few simple questions and caring, and from that open-hearted space. Yeah, well, I can only speak from my experience, but it was the turning point for me.
Is there anything you pulled on from when you had that first experience with your counsellor that you still apply today with your coaching with people?
Well, yeah, there's definitely the listening, and I think it's something that just gets deeper and deeper. It's not like, oh, right now I'm a perfect listener. It's an ongoing practice, but to really hear, I think, and in order to do that, the questions arise in the moment. It's kind of like if you're formulating a question, the next question or whatever, then you're not actually listening to what's being said. So it's just that being really, I do my best to be as present and really listen, and trust that when a question, when there's a pause or when they've finished speaking, that a question will arise. And I guess in that as well is not having a fear of silence. It's okay for it to be totally quiet, and actually that's a really important part, because although it may be quiet and we assume that when things are quiet nothing's happening, that's often when the most is actually happening for the client. That in that space, in that quietness, the insights arise. When there's noise and there's things happening and so on, it doesn't give chance for that to happen. So yeah, and I guess that's also part of just being authentic. That's it. Just kind of like being vulnerable. I think I think to really be there to help other people, you need to be vulnerable yourself, because you're expecting them to be vulnerable, and it's so much easier to be vulnerable with somebody that's kind of like modelling that themselves. So what I'm getting at is that it's okay if a question doesn't arise, or if it's quiet, or if I don't quite know where to go next. I will always share that with my client. I'll always say, I'm a bit unsure of where we go from here, or I'm feeling a little bit stuck, or and that I find will put the client at ease as well. It's like, oh, this isn't some perfect person, and that makes me feel I'm really small and messed up and so on. That they're imperfect and they're not quite sure what's happening here. So there's a connection in that kind of vulnerability and that honesty. Yeah.
One of the things I know I'm very guilty of, and a lot of people that do life coaching, counselling, hypnotherapy, they can find, is that you take on what the client's given to you. What do you do to help protect yourself from feeling tired after or drained after a session?
That's interesting, actually, because, well, I don't believe in protection. I don't believe that there's anything that I need to protect myself from. And I guess the second thing, the second thing is that it just feels like it goes through me. I don't have a sense of anything sticking with me that the client has shared with me. I just always had this belief that what's ever's happening is going through me, almost as if I'm sort of transparent, made of gas, or like steam or something like that. I don't feel sort of solid. So there isn't there isn't anything that can stick. And although perhaps if something does stay with me a little bit, what my experience is that's a gift. That it's really interesting that often what clients present is something that's current in my life, and then there's something for me to see in that as well. So if I'm going through a load of relationship stuff or something, I find that all my clients are going through relationship stuff. So I don't believe that it's me giving. I sort of see it as a cycle, that there's a giving and receiving in the same thing, and that I receive as much from the client as they receive from me. So I think that about sums that one up.
Oh, that's really helpful, thank you. There was a time when you were going to do a trip and you got hepatitis C from an infected tattoo needle, and you were very tired, very drained. It also seemed like it was, the whole lead up to it was quite a frightening experience for you. When you were there doing your speeches for people and mingling with people, what did you really pull on yourself? What strength did you find inside you to keep yourself going at that time?
Oh, Paul, I don't know. God, I haven't thought about that experience for a while. Yeah, I remember it well. It was. Yeah, I hadn't slept for probably weeks, and I just felt so ill and so sort of low, and my self-esteem was just zilch. It was just a. I guess it was a sense of, I just need to do this, you know. And when you've been through tough times, it's a resource, you know. I can pull on that and say, look, you've got through this and you've got through that, and you just need to be there for a few hours. And I know the thing that was the most challenging for me was this voice, which I think a lot of us have in our heads, is what will people think? It's this, you know, concerned about other people's opinions of us and so on. And what I'm also very aware of is that although I felt, you know, so terrible, other people didn't really seem to see that. You know, it feels as if, you know, there's this great big flashing sign saying totally screwed up, messed up, you know, and all the rest of it. But other people don't see that. And so, yeah, it was just. I mean, you know, my Tai Chi teacher said something to me that always sticks with me, was that, you know, there are only two times to do Tai Chi. That's when you feel like it and when you don't feel like it. And so you can apply that to life, really. You know, it's like, okay, there's a load of resistance and I really don't want to do this, but I just need to do it. And what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You know, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? And invariably the worst thing that's going to happen isn't really a big deal. It's just the mind making it out. You know, it kind of magnifies these little things into a great big problem. And also knowing that whenever I go through tough stuff, I will always grow as a result of it. And so it's like, okay, here we go, let's step into the fire again, Miguel. Yeah.
That's one of the things which I was going to mention at some point anyway, is that one of the things I'm working on is what people think of me, and that's always been such a big thing for me. I think particularly with the work that I do, I kind of think, oh God, you know, I'm really messed up there. What will people think of me in the work that I do? It seemed like very open and honest. What do you do to help get yourself over that? What people think of me, as you were just saying?
I think it's it gets easier and easier, and I'm not saying it is still a bit of a recurring theme. It is still something that pops up, but the more that I get my sense of validation internally from myself, it's kind of like a mantra of kind of like, you're good enough, Miguel, you know, it's okay. When we're looking for external validation, then we're at the mercy of kind of like the winds to be blown, you know, left, right and centre. You know, somebody says something, oh, you did a really great job, and your ego goes, oh, that's lovely, aren't I just the bee's knees? And then the next person says, oh, you know, well, I thought that was really terrible and you really messed that up, and then you, like, you know, drop right down. So it's like you end up with this spiky profile of you know, you're up and down and up and down, and actually we're only up and down in our minds. It's just the mind. Nothing has actually changed. There is this constant that runs through. So I guess the key thing that I'm talking about here is not attaching to what the mind, what the running commentary, which I sometimes refer to as shit FM. You know, when shit FM's playing in your head, it's just the quicker you can spot, oh, shit FM's flicked the switch and it's back on again, the quicker I can turn that off and just quieten that down and just come back to what's happening in the moment, and kind of, I'm doing okay, and some people are going to love me and some people are going to hate me, and that's okay. It's a kind of rootedness, I guess, in yourself, in a belief in what you're doing, and an acceptance that we're imperfect, that I will make mistakes and so on, and I think again, you know, the honesty really helps there, because if you can just, if if you do make a mistake and somebody challenges you on it, it becomes painful and stuff if you're trying to defend yourself. If you just kind of hold your hands up and go, yep, you know something, you're right, I messed up there, and I'll make a note of that, and I'll do my best to do it differently next time.
Sure thing. One of the things that you do mention in your book is how you feel you could have done better in certain circumstances, particularly with relationships. Would there be anything that you felt that you had within you that you did pass on to somebody that made their life a little better, even in how small?
I like to think that there are all sorts of things that I've passed on to other people that have made a difference, and I see my mission in the world as the metaphor that fits best for me is gardening. Really, I'm a gardener, so there's a little bit of preparation of the soil, there's a little bit of tending of the relationship and so on, but invariably what I do is plant a seed, and it's quite often that I'm not around to see what actually germinates and what actually happens to that seed. So I really like to think that every book that's out there is a little seed, and it's made a difference, and hopefully it gets passed on to other people. But I do, I meet people sometimes. I'll meet people that say, "Oh, I heard you speak last year or something, and you were the sort of, the catalyst that made me finally get my act together and make the change, maybe leave the job that I was doing that I wasn't happy doing, and start working for myself." Or a few people have got back to me and said, I just loved hearing your story and so on, and it's inspired me to finally write my story. I've had a few really nice testimonials and stuff from young people that have said how key it was, the time that we had together. But often it's something that kind of comes to fruition later. It's just, I sometimes use the sort of metaphor of a sort of trajectory, that let's say that somebody was on their trajectory, was heading to a not very good destination. My intervention, or a talk, or the book, or some one-to-one sessions, or a workshop, or whatever, it might just be that it just gives them a little tiny nudge so that their trajectory is altered slightly. And you may not be able to see the difference initially, but like a sort of an angle, the further it goes, the bigger it becomes obvious that you've ended up in a very different place. So I like to think of it like that, and that not to measure my success or my contribution to the world by the harvest that I reap, but by the seeds that I sow. Maybe that's a way of saying that I'm not very good at measuring the impact of what I do, but I believe that it does make a difference, and I have enough little snippets of information. And it's a tricky question in a way, because I think there's a bit of me that actually deletes some of that information as well. The positive feedback that I get, because whereas the mind is always, we're always sort of striving to get better or do more or make a bigger impact, and so if we just focus on all the successes, we might become a little bit complacent and stuff like that. I'm doing enough now, or just keep it the same. So I think maybe just the fact that I can't remember anything too many really specific examples of that. It's a bit of I'm not great at blowing my own trumpet. You'd probably have to speak to other people, ask other people that question. Would be a better one to ask. Yeah.
You've done work with younger people, and young people are incredibly influenced by the crowd they're with. What could you say to somebody that's maybe fearful of saying no with getting involved with a gang, doing something, taking particular drugs, or doing some criminal activities, that if they feel that gut feeling it's not right, but they feel they should go along with, what advice could you give them to help them in that situation?
You see, it's interesting that life seems to get more and more paradoxical, and what becomes more and more apparent to me, that is, if we try and push somebody in a certain direction, often what that means is that they just dig their heels in and want to go in that direction less. I think that's particularly relevant for young people, because you have to find your own way in the world. You have to make your own mistakes. So acceptance is a really key part. For me, it's just accepting somebody fully where they are. It's not trying to change them. And I'm not massive on advice. If I'm asked for advice, then I'll give advice and say from my experience, but you have to work it out for yourself. I guess the key thing for me is just to instill in them some sense of responsibility. That, okay, if you're going to join a gang, or if you decide you're going to get into something or other, then you're responsible for that, and that means that you're also responsible for the consequences. I'm not sure that I'm really into sort of like right and wrong decisions. I think there are just decisions and just choices. Some of them will lead to pain, which hopefully that we will learn from, and some of them will lead to joy and other places. And everybody will need to take their own path. But having said that, I think it's always a good idea to just think, okay, well, if I embark on this journey, what are the likely destinations that are going to culminate from that? And in a way, you've just got to weigh it up. You've got to weigh it up, and if it looks like it's probably going to end up in a not very good place, then maybe you need to think again. But and having said that as well, people seem to make choices based on their sense of self-belief and their sense of self-worth. As I know, the choices that I made, which in some way I could frame them as wrong choices, because they did lead to an awful lot of pain and suffering and issues with my health, etc., etc. It was, in a way, I couldn't have made another choice. I couldn't have made a choice to go to somewhere really to hook up with a beautiful woman and have children and get a job that I love doing and live happily ever after, because that wasn't in alignment with my journey, with who I was. I needed to go through that. I'm not sure how well I answered that question, but
no, that was good.
It's answered.
I think I like the quote was saying, when you're down, turn over and look at the stars. I can't remember the exact expression of it now, but there might be somebody listening now that is going through that deep sort of pain. What could you just sort of say from your experience, so that they know it's okay to experience that, and there'll be a blessing in disguise? So what could you say about that?
Yeah. It's going to happen. Everybody has adversity. Everybody has challenges in their life. If you don't have that, in a way, you haven't fully experienced life. If you just lead, there's the story of Siddhartha, isn't there? The Buddha, that he was in this palace that was all beautiful and he was protected. There weren't any old people around and there was no disease and everything was perfect. But he couldn't handle that, and one day he saw an old person. They hadn't hidden this one little old person, and he saw that sort of pain and this decay and an old age and stuff, and that drew him, and he realised he wanted to go out into the world, and there was a pull into exploring suffering. It's a part of what it is to be alive. It is the pain, but the choice that we have, I believe, is how long we stay in that pain and how quickly we move through it. And I would say that the key factor for that is the mind. And what I notice when I'm going through challenging stuff is that my mind has the tendency to want to give me a hard time for having a hard time. So it becomes a double whammy. Things are going not well. The mind chirps in with, oh, this is your fault and you're useless and you're stupid and you deserve it, or you'll never be lovable, and all that sort of stuff. So the more we can sort of like catch shit FM playing and just quieten it down and just bring our attention back to actually what we're feeling, what are the emotions, what's actually happening in your body, the more that you can actually have the courage to actually be present with what's going on, the quicker it will transform. The quicker the emotional stuff sort of shifts. Once the emotional stuff shifts, we can begin to see things more clearly, because emotions often feel a bit to me like a fog. They descend and nothing's clear. It's not a good time to be making decisions and so on. But the more we're present with the pain of the emotion, the quicker it transforms, and the quicker we can begin to see our way, and our way forward, or the path begins to kind of present itself. So yeah, don't give yourself a hard time. If you're having a hard time, then everybody else is having a hard time as well. They all may be wearing masks of, oh yeah, I'm cool, I'm fine, and everything's cool in my world. But that's not true. That's kind of a strange thing that has just arisen in our society, that we tend to do that. So you're not alone. Don't isolate yourself. Be vulnerable and connect with other people, and share that you're struggling and so on with people that care about you, or other people that are perhaps struggling in similar ways. The sort of AA sort of model is a classic one, that recovering alcoholics come together and they meet and they talk about their experience, and in that sharedness, in that vulnerability, there is healing and there's strength that comes from that. Yeah,
that's very good. If anybody wants to get hold of your excellent book, or book you for a workshop or private coaching, how can they get in contact with you?
Okay, well, my email address is coaching@migueldean.co.uk. My website is www.migueldean.net. And I'm pretty big on Facebook, so yeah, you can find me on Facebook as well. I'm very active on Facebook. I see Facebook as a window of hope and inspiration and so on into the world. So I really like sort of putting stuff up there on Facebook that will help people and challenge and get people thinking and stuff. So yeah, that's probably I think if you want to find me, you'll find me.
So you were saying that this book, you said that instead of it collecting dust, and it's not to make money, it's to really share the love around. Each one of us, I believe, has a seed within inside us that we can leave to inspire. Might not we've had books, but there's something magical in each one of us.
Yeah.
What could we do as individuals to help pass on that seed to help wonderful things grow in other people?
Okay, yeah. Okay, so yeah, I agree. I believe that we all have a seed, or we all have a gift. We all, the incredible thing is there are 7 billion odd people on the planet, and every single one is unique. And that means for me that in a way everybody has an absolutely unique gift. If you like, part of the life journey for me is initially just discovering, what is my gift? What is my purpose? What am I here for? So it may be that you just have to try lots of different things, and maybe you get pulled in a certain direction and check that out, and you may find, well, no, that's not quite it. That doesn't. It's the things that light you up. It's the things that make you feel in flow. I think that they talk about, don't they? When you feel in flow, and when you feel really in alignment, and when you feel really alive, that's a good sign for me that you're close, or that you've found your life purpose, your life gift. It's a bit like that game that you used to play when you were little, and it's kind of like you hide something and somebody has to look for it, and you say hotter or colder. So the more alive you feel, the closer you are to finding your gift, your unique reason why you're here in this body on this planet. So once you've found that, then it's no good keeping it to yourself. When you find that thing, you'll find that you can't keep it to yourself. You just want to share it. You just want to give it, and it just kind of, it moves me just speaking about it. Just imagine what the world would be like if that was what we were taught at school. The reason that you're here is to find your gift, and when you found it, to share it. And because it will shrivel and die if you just keep it to yourself. It grows into something beautiful when you start sharing it. What a co-creation, collaboration, and what a beautiful, rich garden life would be then.
Is there anything else you'd like to say that I haven't mentioned so far?
I guess what's really passionate in me at the moment, and increasingly kind of like growing in power in me, is just, you know, what's going on in the world, what we're doing to the environment, you know, the injustice that we're inflicting on other human beings and on non-human beings. And I believe that we can all do something about that. We are all responsible for you know, for what's happening in the world. And my message is always, you know, lots of little things add up into big change. You know, there's a really nice little saying that says, you know, if you believe that you are too small to make a difference, try spending a night in a tent with a mosquito. So, you know, never think that a little act of kindness, or just sharing your gifts a little bit, or just a little bit of time for somebody, is insignificant and it's not worth anything. This stuff is not measurable in a linear sort of perspective. If you do something kind, out of kindness and from love, it's like a little pebble in a pond. You don't know how far those ripples are going to spread out. And if everybody just steps that up a little bit, for me, that's kind of love in action. And that's, you know, the sort of spiritual term is perhaps raising consciousness. And it's all those little things that will help transform this beautiful planet that we live on into a more beautiful place that is more loving and fairer. And you know, I believe that we can have heaven on earth. And for me, that's those little acts of kindness from love will be instrumental, because it's already happening in creating that.
Miguel, thank you for your time today. That was amazing.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
As I am sure you will agree, quite an inspirational story. The main points that I really learned from this interview was that the act of real, deep listening to fully understand the person you're communicating with, and to not be worried about leaving silence. Sometimes silence is important, sometimes silence can be very healing. And the act of vulnerability, I've heard it before with Dr. David Hamilton, and I've read it in many other books, but I truly believe that if we were all just that little bit more vulnerable and removed our masks, we would feel that there's less we need to prove, and in doing so, it may well make the world a happier place. And finally, share a seed of knowledge or spread your love. You may well wish to leave a comment, and that being one of your favourite quotes that somebody coming to this YouTube video will find inspiring. You may well wish to share this interview with somebody, or maybe you have a skill or a resource that you'd like to pass on to a loved one. Whatever it is, I encourage you to not just hold on to it yourself, but to give freely, give from the heart. If you enjoyed listening to this interview, then please subscribe to my channel. Also like and share. For more information about Miguel Dean, you can go to his website www.migueldean.net. And for more information about how NLP and hypnotherapy can help move your life forward, then please go to my website www.paulgoddardnlp.co.uk. On both our websites there are links to our social media pages. Until the next time, be kind and compassionate to yourselves and others.